Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, guys. Diego Lopes finally decided to move up to lightweight, and honestly, this opens a lot of opportunities for this guy because firstly, I'm just glad that he knew and he finally admitted, that there's no way in the world that he can actually beat Alexander Volkanovski. Like if he fights him 100 times, he'll probably lose 100 times. And I'm just glad that he isn't delusional and he actually just accepted the fact, fact and not going the same direction as like Max Holloway, for example. Especially when Volk stated that he isn't retiring anytime soon. And he probably knows Diego Lopez that even if he does beat someone like Movzar or Aljamain Sterling, still it's just not worth it staying at featherweight right now. And at lightweight, the opportunities are endless because if you guys are paying attention to Diego's career, he's basically the boogeyman of the featherweight division at this point. And that win over Steven Garcia was obviously really good. The knockout over Gene Silva was spectacular, and he's just right now, if he does fight at lightweight, I mean, he is obviously fighting at like he definitely deserves a top 5 instantly in my opinion, because I mean at featherweight, right, he was basically he's basically the number 2 ranked contender, and he has been that after the first fight. Obviously the Movzar is next on the line, and you could make a case for while Leron was on number 3, number 2 after Movzar, but now at this point with his knockouts over Gene Silva and Steve Garcia, there's no denying that he's the 3rd best featherweight on the planet, if not 2nd, right? But at this point, at lightweight, he, in my opinion, the opportunity is endless. Honestly, like firstly, he was a really tall and lengthy featherweight, so I don't think the size difference compared to guys at lightweight will be that much significant for Diego Lopez. But when it comes to fighters, right, let's say someone like Ilia Topuria, in my opinion, is just absolutely perfect. Even though it probably won't be Ilia, just because Diego Lopez wants to, he is usually really extremely active, especially compared to Topuria. And now that Topuria is basically 2 broken orbitals, will take a long time to return. So for now I guess Topuria is out of the window. But I have a fighter in my mind, right? This guy, he fought in the same card as Diego's latest fight. Fought in the same card. He's a lightweight, of course, really hungry, really, his style is really entertaining. And if they actually fight, it'll just be a striking spectacle, honestly. And the man who I'm referring to, most of you guys have guessed already, is Moises Rufi. This guy, honestly, he's definitely one of my favorite fighters in the world right now, definitely. And to see him fight someone like Diego Lopez, it'll be an absolute pleasure to the eyes, honestly, bro. Not to the eyes, but the heart also. Like this will honestly, and I hope they make this fight. And if they don't, I don't really know what options they have, because Diego, he definitely has superstar potential. So they definitely don't wanna throw him in there against a wrestler or a BJJ guy, for example. Renato Moicano, right? They definitely don't want to do that. So they want to use this guy, and even though I know that Hoofy will probably be a extremely difficult matchup for Diego Lopez, and for Hoofy too. I expect it to be quite competitive because both of these guys have really good striking. And even though I have seen Diego Lopez get outstruck by Alexander Volkanovski for 10 rounds, again that is Alexander Volkanovski, right? So even though I expected it to be somewhat competitive, I still see Diego Lopez. I guess it's a 50-50, right? Because if you guys tell me to pick one, I'm honestly it's a real 50-50, but I'll give the edge to Hoofy, to be honest. But I see if Diego Lopez wins by knockout, I won't be surprised at all, bro. But other than Hoofy, let's take a look at the options, right? Who else do we have in the top 5 lightweight division, right? Obviously, Gaethje as the champion, Ilia Topuria as the number 1, Charles Oliveira after that, and obviously Paddy BSD after that. Let's say BSD loses that fight, right? He'll probably gonna get banged up bad, to be honest. So that'll probably take a lot of time to recover after that. If he takes a lot of punishment, which I do believe he will. And same with Paddy, right? If he does lose to BSD, firstly, Paddy isn't the most active fighter out there. Secondly, he will most likely take a lot of damage. But that makes Hoofy basically the perfect option for someone like Diego Lopez, especially for his first fight at this division. Knowing that he is basically the And if it wasn't for the Volkanovski rematch already, he would have been the next one for the title fight, right? After Movzar. So considering that, he should definitely, if he actually manages to knock out Moishev, especially with the momentum of he's on right now. Yeah, grant him a title shot, bro. Like honestly, like I don't know what's going on with Arman, Ilya, Justin, with that in that situation. Obviously, the winner of BSD Paddy, but still, he should definitely, in my opinion, be the next one for the title. If he does manage to beat Hope, though, that'll be an extremely difficult match. But yeah, anyways, just to take on this, guys. You guys have felt my show, guys. Think inshallah, I'll see you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.